Shalom, my name is Joseph Shulam. I'm at home, a bit under the weather, with problems that are being examined now by laboratories and doctors. And we are in the 82nd day of the war with the Hamas and with the Hezbollah from Lebanon. We're in the war in the south with the Hamas and in the north with the Hezbollah. A very complicated situation. We are progressing slowly. We are right on top of the tunnels in southern Gaza and the city of Khan Yunis, the city of Yahya Sinwar and his gang of criminals, heartless sadists, and the war is bloody on both sides. We have almost 130 hostages still in the hands of the Hamas. There is old people, young people, men and women, and they're suffering terrible abuse. And there is negotiation. And this morning when I woke up, I thought, there is no other nation in the history of humanity that over thousands of years, its enemies don't want peace, they don't want coexistence, they don't want partnership, they want to annihilate, delete this nation from the face of the earth. Small nation. There is about 20 cities, and actually more than 20 cities, that the population of these cities exceeds and some doubles the total population of Jews in the world. Small country. Size of about New Hampshire, the state of New Hampshire in the United States. One of the smallest countries in territory possible in the whole world. There are counties in Texas that are bigger than the whole state of Israel. In fact, there is a farm, the King's Farm in Texas, that's bigger than the state of Israel. And I knew a Jew in Brazil, Marcos Mendes. Marcos Mendes Jr., big company, that his private lake was almost the size of the state of Israel. And I was in a speedboat in his lake. Didn't go the whole length of the lake, but we had some fun. The small nation of Israel, the small nation of the Jews. I played with AI this morning and asked who of the actors of Hollywood are Jews. You know what? You wouldn't believe it. But a very large percentage of the most famous actors of Hollywood are Jews. You ask AI, who are the Nobel Prize winners? Not a small number. Not a small number. Jews. who are the great inventors of science, modern science? Jews. Who developed the atomic bomb? Jews. Who are the famous musicians, both classical and modern, from Mahler to Bernstein? Jews. Why do they hate us? Why so many people hate us? Why do so many times in history empires, huge empires, want to wipe us out? And we're still here, and we're alive, and our enemies still want to annihilate us. That's on their charter, that's on their constitution of the Hamas. Their purpose for existence is to wipe out the state of Israel, to wipe out the Jews from the Middle East, from the land that was given by God Himself to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and to King David. And the strange thing is, they're Muslim. And if you read the Quran, most of the Quran is a kind of a strange transcription of the Torah, the law of Moses. They believe in Abraham, in Isaac, in Jacob, in Joseph, in King David, in Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, all the prophets. And they want to annihilate us, the Jews. It didn't start now. It already started way, way back in the days of Abraham, when Abraham's firstborn son, Ishmael, that was born from an Egyptian slave named Hagar, played with Isaac. He was 17 years old. Isaac was about 6 years old. Play, the word for play is sexual play. And when Sarah saw that, she demanded Abraham to kick out Hagar and her son Ishmael. Why did Ishmael play sexually with Isaac? Because he wanted to neuter him so that he will not have children, and the promise of Abraham that God gave to Abraham would go through Ishmael, which was the first intent, until God opened up the womb of Sarah and gave her a child at the age of 90, and Abraham was 100, and the child was Isaac, and that name was given by the angel that is called the Lord, or the way Americans pronounce the holy name of God, Jehovah. That came, three such angels, such messengers came to Abraham in the oaks of Mamre in Hebron. They gave the name because they heard Sarah laugh. She said, "How could an old woman like me bear a child at this age?" So his name was Laugh, Isaac, Yitzchak in Hebrew. But let me get back to the main point. One of the first times that we know outright that empire, the Persian Empire, I mean, even today, if you look at the Persian Empire, historically, it was Persia was the first place that had decided to annihilate the Jews. The Jews went there because Iran conquered Persia, conquered Babylon, and it was like America. Susa, the capital of Iran, of Persia, was like America. The description of the palace of Artaxerxes, the Greek name of Ahasuerus from the book of Esther. And actually, Mordecai the Jew, the uncle of Esther in the book of Esther, was prime minister for a while until Haman, who was the descendant of the Amalekites, the king of the Amalekites that King Saul spared against the command of God to kill him. And because of that, King Saul lost his kingdom, lost his favor with God. But his descendant, Haman, the Agagite, King Agag was the king of the Amalekites in the days of the prophet Samuel and King Saul. And he decides that the Jews have no room in the empire. And he gives several reasons in the book of Esther why the Jews don't have room in the empire. Here are the reasons. You can see it in the book of Esther. Number one, the Jews don't bow, don't kowtow to anybody, any human, only to God. Number two, the Jews, their laws are different than ours, different than everybody else's, actually. Given by God to Moses and the children of Israel from Mount Sinai, the Ten Commandments. I know a little bit, not much, about the ancient code of law of Hammurabi and the Namu and all the other Middle Eastern codes of law that predate some by 1,000 years and more than 1,000 years from the time that God gave the law to Moses. And the difference between the laws from a humanitarian point of view is sky high. One of the big differences in the laws of the Jews is that all men are created equal, and you cannot do with a slave whatever you want to. And if a non-slave person, let's take one of the older than Hammurabi, the Namu law. If a noble person kills somebody by accident, nothing. If he killed a slave, if he killed somebody on his own status, he will pay for it. Human life depended on who you are, what caste you are, what level you are, how rich you are, how close to the government you are. Slavery was rampant. All kinds of slavery. From labor to sexual slavery. And free and allowed by the law. Yes, the law that God gave Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses, and the children of Israel is different from the laws of these empires of this world. In 2010, I was invited by the government of the state of Hubei to Wuhan, the capital of Hubei. Everybody knows Wuhan today because that's where the coronavirus was released from the laboratory of Wuhan. The vice president of the state of Hubei invited me, Mrs. Yu. And after a very nice lunch in a very nice restaurant with very nice people. We went to her office for a chat, several hour chat. She asked me, "What do you teach?" I invited you because I heard that you teach only Bible and don't delve into politics and into our human rights issues. I said, "You're right. I teach only Bible. And I don't mix in politics. My faith in God is in God, and I don't mix in politics because God is in charge of all nations and all the rulers of all nations according to the Bible." I asked her, "Do you believe in God?" She said, "No, no, I'm a communist. But I read the Bible." I said, "Why did you read the Bible, Mrs. Yu?" She said, "Because the Bible is the first communist book in history." I said, I grew up in a home where my mother was a very famous communist in Bulgaria. I know something about communism. How could you say that? She said, "Because the Bible is the first place that says if you don't work, you don't eat." And she continued and said, "Without the Bible, there would be no Magna Carta, no human rights, no workers' rights." I said, "Mrs. Yu, you're right." And she knew the Bible. Yes, the Bible, the law of the Jews is different from the laws of most of the nations of the world in history. That's the second reason that Haman gave Artaxerxes, the Hashverosh, why he should eliminate the Jews. They don't bow to anybody, they don't kowtow to anybody, and their laws are different. The third reason is it's not worth it for you, king, and your empire to keep the Jews. They stick to themselves. They don't mix with anybody, meaning that they don't intermarry. They do nowadays, they do. But in those days, they didn't. They don't intermarry. The fourth reason, subjective reason, you don't get any benefit from them. They stick to themselves. These were the reasons why the Persian Empire of Artaxerxes, one of the great conquerors and rulers of the Persian Empire, that spread all the way to Kazakhstan and all the stands in South Asia were either Turkmen or Parsi, Persian. It didn't start there, it started in Egypt with Pharaoh because his reasons were very similar. The first chapter of the book of Exodus, they're growing fast, they're prosperous, and they may turn against us if an enemy attacks us. We can't trust them. So he said, kill every male. Well, with no males, there would be no continuation of the Hebrew race. But this continues. It's irrational. What's happening in the war in Gaza and the war with the Hezbollah is irrational. And that irrationality is not helpful for anybody. It's wrong. It's wrong from every point of view. And it shouldn't be. It should not be. It should not be. Yes, I am convinced that those who want to annihilate Israel and the Jewish nation from the Middle East, if you ask them why, most of them don't have an answer. It's just something they want to do. Now, my parents lived through the Holocaust. My father, who worked for the Americans, got married in 1930 to my mother, got her pregnant, and then disappeared and returned 14 years later when the war ended. That's when I was born. My sister was 15 years older than me. When I was born, she was 15. My mother asked her to babysit me and take me on to the park with a very nice baby carriage brought from London. And she was taking me on a walk. I was in the baby carriage, a baby, and some old woman passed by her and said, "Wow, my, what a young girl and already has a baby." That was the last time that my sister babysitted me. Didn't want to babysit me or take me on a walk or anything for the rest of my life until she passed away. God bless her soul. She was a believer in Yeshua. Yes, Israel is the only nation that has multiple times, multiple empires, multiple parts of the world, intelligent nations like Germany that had Goethe and other philosophers and Kant. Decided to annihilate the Jews of Europe. The doctors, the professors, the scientists, the inventors, annihilate the Jews of Europe, of the world actually, but they were in Europe. And now Persia has it on their charter to annihilate the Jews. The Hamas has it on their charter to annihilate the state of Israel and the Jews. Now I'm going to address the Christians, the Christian anti-Semites. Most of the anti-Semites today are Christians. The golden era of Jewish history, 500 years of the golden era of Jewish history, is when the Muslims ruled Spain and Portugal. That was the more golden era of Jewish history. The Jewish prospered and they made Islam prosper. The doctor of the Caliph was Maimonides, Musa ibn Maimonides. Moshe ben Maimon in Hebrew. The doctor of the Caliph in Cordoba, Spain. The Jews prospered. My family comes from Spain. They were kicked out of Spain in 1492, the same year that Columbus sailed out of Spain and found America. The Jews were expelled from Spain. The Inquisition started against the Jews in Spain and Portugal and Italy and all over the Catholic countries in 1432. No, actually, I'm wrong. 1472 is when the Inquisition really got on the case of the Jews, tortured them, burned them alive by the thousands, not by the hundreds, by the thousands, tens of thousands. Only in the Hall of Records in Lisbon, there is 44 cases. The law, the court cases against the Jews, 44,000 cases. Most of them were burned alive in the main square in Lisbon or in Plaza Real in Madrid. Yes. And the Christians that worship a Jew, the king of the Jews, the son of David, the son of Abraham. That's how the Gospel of Matthew starts. For them to be so infused, those that hate Jews, that hate Israel, so infused with anti-Semitism, with hate, desire to annihilate the Jews in their own countries, that parade with Nazi symbols, with upraised arm and say, Heil Hitler. Hitler killed himself. He's not in heaven. Not for what he did, not for what he taught, not for what he was thinking, not for what he imagined would happen in his favor. No, sir. I don't say things like that very lightly. But there are some figures in history that if they're in heaven, I don't want to go there. Yes. And you wouldn't want to go there either. I am calling on you, dear Christian brothers and sisters, Jewish brothers and sisters, and sane Muslim brothers and sisters. The human race to stand up for what is good, holy, righteous, just, and true. And don't allow your churches, your governments, your clubs, your organizations to raise a finger against a Jew or against Israel. It is your moral responsibility, God given privilege to stand with Israel. Because in the end, in that judgment day, when all humanity will stand in front of the white throne of the Messiah, the crucified Jew, Yeshua, Jesus, that was born in Bethlehem, raised in Nazareth in the Galilee, ascended from Jerusalem, from the Mount of Olives, and returning to Jerusalem. Not to Palestinian Jerusalem, to Israel's Jerusalem, that has Palestinians and Christians and Muslims living here side by side. Yes, the just thing to do is don't allow that vain hatred, that irrational thinking, that thing that devours your souls. If you hate Jews, you hate Jesus and Moses and Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Hosea and Amos and Zechariah, that foresees where the Gentiles are going to come. The nations will come to Jerusalem to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Yeshua sitting on his right hand. Yes. That's the rational thing to do, my brothers. And may God bless you all and bless us all. In Yeshua's name. Amen.